Hi guys, my name's Jessica Johnson and I study volcanoes in New Zealand. I've been told that you are doing a project on natural hazards and you have some good questions about volcanoes that I hope I'll be able to answer. First of all, let me introduce myself a little bit more. I grew up in London and when I went to school, when I was about your age, we did a project on volcanoes and I really enjoyed it. So much that I wanted to study it more. And nearly 20 years later, I'm still studying it and I'm still really enjoying it and I'm making money at it. So that's a really cool thing for me. I've come to New Zealand to study volcanoes because it's a good place to go because there are lots of volcanoes here. The volcanoes occur when the earth is the crust of the earth is very thin. And so the magma pushes its way up out of the crust. At these locations you often also get earthquakes. So in New Zealand you'll get a lot of volcanoes and also earthquakes. And that's the same with Japan. Lots of volcanoes and, as we know, lots of earthquakes. So what is magma made of? Well, magma is basically melted rock. And it's melted because it's very, very hot. And so when it melts, it goes into a liquid and into gas, in the same way that when you boil water, it turns into a gas, turns into steam. So this is basically what makes volcanoes erupt as well. If you are turning rock into gas, you get a build-up of pressure. And so this is what happens often in a volcano. You get a build-up of pressure and then you get a small earthquake or something happens to release the pressure, and it's very similar to shaking a bottle of Coke and opening it and it all comes fizzing out. Very similar to what happens at a volcano. Now there are lots of different types of magma. Some magma is sticky and some magma is runny. It's because we get different types of rocks. Some rocks are harder than others. And so the type of magma will affect what type of eruption you have. So for example, in Hawaii, you have a very runny magma which makes very runny lava. And lava is what the liquid part of the magma is called when it's above the ground. So you've probably seen the rivers of lava in Hawaii. You also get explosive volcanoes, for example, Mount St. Helens, which is in America. And at this volcano, a lot of pressure got built up because the lava was really sticky and it wasn't able to flow. And so when the pressure was released, it turned to gas so quickly that it made an explosion. How do volcanoes affect what's around them? Well, this goes back to, it depends what sort of lava you're talking about. In Hawaii, the lava flows fairly slowly, so you can probably outrun it, but you can't really stop it. So if it's coming towards your house, you probably have enough time to get your important things out of the house, but you can't stop it getting to your house. Whereas at Mount St. Helens, because it was a big explosion, it killed quite a lot of people. And that was a special case as well, because rather than exploding up, it exploded outwards. So rather than holding the Coke bottle so that all of the Coke goes up, it's like shaking a Coke bottle, holding it, pointing it at somebody, and then taking the lid off. So that directed it at people, and so that's why it was worse and it killed people. So those are the direct effects, but volcanoes also have a lot of other effects. I'm sure that some of you may have seen the recent eruption of the Icelandic volcano, which I'm not going to try and pronounce, and that's because the plume of ash went high into the atmosphere, and it's not good to drive planes through that. So that affected the air traffic. Another way, a good thing that volcanoes can do is the soil that's made from volcanic ash is very fertile, so it's very good to grow things in. And so that's why at somewhere like in Italy, where there are lots of volcanoes, there's lots of good farmland on the side of the volcano, which could also be a problem because it means that a lot of people are living close to it. So if it erupts, it's harder to get people away. Have scientists been hurt by volcanoes? Well, yes, they have. Mount St. Helens, in fact, 2 scientists got killed by the Mount St. Helens eruption in 1980. And it's mainly down to trying to understand what's going on. With Mount St. Helens, they didn't expect the eruption to come out sideways. They knew it was going to erupt, but they didn't know that it was going to come out sideways, so they weren't in the right place. A lot of the time, the reason people die from volcanic eruptions is because they don't listen to the scientists. So the scientists can see that the volcano might erupt, and they tell people that it might erupt. And so people get scared and they leave, but then maybe a couple of days later, if it hasn't erupted yet, people get bored and they go back again. And that's why people get hurt, and that's what's happened in Montserrat, which is in the Caribbean. How much power does a volcano produce? Well, there's 2 answers to this question. The first one is an example like Iceland. Pretty much the whole of Iceland, they get their electricity from geothermal power. So they're harnessing the heat from the volcanoes to make electricity. So that's a lot of energy in a good way. The other answer is that a large volcanic eruption, a really large volcanic eruption, not that we've had recently, is enormous. If I compare it to a nuclear bomb, if a supervolcano erupted, and by supervolcano I'm talking about the size of Yellowstone, which scientists didn't even know was a volcano until they went into space and looked down on it. It's a big volcano. If that erupted, it would produce the same amount of power as 100 billion nuclear bombs a second. And the eruption would probably go on for years. So something like that has been estimated that it would wipe out half of the population of the Earth. So compared to a nuclear bomb, a supervolcano is very, very big. But those don't happen very often. The smaller volcanoes are more equivalent to 100 nuclear bombs, which is still big. What other questions have we got? Can you touch lava? Well, no, because it's very, very, very hot. It's about 1,000 times hotter than boiling water. so you wouldn't want to touch it. What affects how much lava comes out? That's a good question. So that comes down to how sticky the lava is. It's like a tube of toothpaste. If it's like a tube of toothpaste, then it will come out slowly. But if it's less sticky, it might flow like water. We've got a lot looking at. It just depends on the volcano. And how old a volcano is? Well, again, that's very difficult to answer. There are some volcanoes that are as old as the Earth. There are some volcanoes that are brand new. There are new ones being created all the time. There is one in Iceland that has recently created a new island that's come up out of the sea, just when the volcano reached the surface. But every time a volcano erupts, it creates more land. So some volcanoes are very, very new, and some volcanoes are very, very old. So I hope I've answered some of your questions. They were very good questions, and if I knew the answers to all of these questions, then I wouldn't have a job. So good luck with your project, and if you have any more questions, I'd be happy to answer them. See you guys!